Hi, I'm Matt Carpenter. Welcome to College, the podcast. If you don't follow us already, please do. Please share us wherever you listen to your podcasts. On today's episode, co-host Peggy Keough and I talk about the big, beautiful bill, specifically how it impacts our college space. We're going to talk about the proposed reduction in Pell Grants, the proposed reduction in work study, and what you can do about it, right? How can you control the controllables? And then we spend most of the episode talking about our own college journeys and how we saved for college for our kids, or our philosophies around saving for college for both of our kids. So I think that was a really interesting conversation. And then Peggy sends us out with a little bit of details, pros and cons with 529 plans, and how you can think about incorporating that into your family's college saving decision, or whether you decide to save at all. I hope you enjoy. Okay, here we are, Peg. Summertime, June.
Yep. Summertime. My summertime might be a little different than yours. We actually had rain on Sunday. My dog freaked out because in Arizona, they don't have traditional gutters like you and I are used to. Like, you just have these things jutting out of your house and it flows from the roof and just goes crashing down. And she was like wandering the house like, what the hell is going on here? And there was some thunder, which in Seattle, like, it almost never thunders and lightnings. So she was kind of freaked out, but we were both like, some rain, because we're not used to it. But it's going to be back up to 104. So we're back to the desert. Although I'm telling you, so far it's lovely. It's lovely.
It's a dry heat, whatever the hell that means at 104. It's beautiful here. I'm happy to report it is beautiful here. We're still bookend. What we've learned is that beautiful weather basically Monday through Thursday, and then when it turns to the weekend, that's when the ugly weather has been rearing its ugly head. So we would like to switch that, but here we are. It's the price we pay to live in the best place.
Mother Nature, what are you going to do? Mother Nature. And I noticed, once we've left Seattle, although we had some nice weather before we left, but it's just gorgeous, which usually June, not a great month in Seattle, but it is a good one right now. So.
Well, and I guess we don't play down to the weather either. That's a big saying around here. We don't play down to the weather. So, right, Jara? She knows. We never play down to the weather, right? No, that's right. Jara's wedding next Friday, so that'll be nice for her. Okay, Peggy, let's start with what's in the news here first. A couple things that we want to hit on here, just to rattle them off. Big, beautiful bill, reduction in Pell, reduction in work study. Those are kind of each of the things we'll hit on, but why don't you kind of talk about some of these changes that are expected to happen within this big, beautiful bill, before it hits the president's desk?
So as we've talked about the last couple episodes, this big, beautiful bill that Trump put to the House and the Senate, passed the House, and now the Senate's playing around with it. And there's a lot of different pieces to it. And there's no way it'll come out the same when it ends up on the president's desk. Most of the stuff that I've been reading about is not the education stuff that they're grappling with right now. We'll see what happens. Some of the Republicans want bigger cuts. They're more conservative. And there's just different pieces around Medicaid and the state and local tax deductions, that kind of stuff. So there's just some different pieces there that don't affect the education piece. So as always, we'll keep you apprised as this moves through the Senate. I think in an ideal world, they're targeting that they've got this to the president, by the beginning of July. So we'll keep you posted on how that flows. But the other piece is that Trump came out with the 2026 fiscal year budget, and there are a couple things that are pretty glaring, affecting the education piece. As we know, there's been a push from day one to get rid of the education department and move the key pieces elsewhere. So there's further reductions in spending in that department, but he has proposed an 80% reduction in federal work study. So what that is part of a need-based aid package. And up until now, the federal government is paying half the wage for the student. The student actually goes and gets a job and works, and then the family uses that money however they choose to cover expenses. He's saying, hey, we want an 80% reduction of what we're kicking in there, and the colleges should pick it up. It's kind of the deal. The other piece is Pell Grant. As we've talked about, there are some changes in the bill, the big beautiful bill, about how many hours you have to be in school to actually get a full Pell. Now he's talking about the actual amount of the Pell. So right now it's $7,395 a year, and that's a federal grant, free money if you qualify. It's for low income people. He's proposing to cut that down to 5,700. So huge reduction in the Pell. This is separate from that bill. This is the budget that's coming up. So I would encourage you to understand what's going on here. And if you're not happy, reach out to your representatives, reach out to your senators. We're in a democracy. That's how it works. Make your voice heard. You are the one that's electing your officials. So if you're happy or not happy, you can let them know. So those are the two big pieces in the news right now. Do you want to comment on anything,
Yeah,
Matt?
I mean, I got some thoughts on that. One of them I have some concerns about, vehemently against. The other one less so. To me, the reduction in what the federal government is going to contribute towards work study, I'm less concerned about this. I think it's going to be the colleges that are going to be negatively impacted the most. Some students might feel the brunt of this, but most of these positions, these colleges they need to fill them, right? They're still going to need somebody at the rec center to check cards and somebody to be at the library, right? There's going to have to be individuals here, presumably the students, relatively cheap cost of labor. So it was great for the colleges that they were being subsidized by the federal government in order to fill these positions. And maybe there was some additional positions that really didn't need to be there, but the colleges, tried to give some extra opportunities for the kids to make money. They're getting subsidized. So maybe there was some kind of additional jobs that wouldn't be there without the subsidies of the federal government, right? So in those cases, maybe we're going to see some students be negatively impacted. But I'm still not terribly concerned with that, because I always say, when people ask me about work study, my answer to that is like, hey, look, it's a great program. Say yes, you want to be eligible for it on the FAFSA, throw your hat in the ring, then see what job, if any, that you actually get on campus. But you're not going to make a lot of money with this. The concept is that, yes, we can earn some money, usually minimum wage or thereabouts, but we can also study at the same time, right? It is one of these jobs where we're sitting at the library, we can get some homework done, right, and earn some money. I always tell families, like, if you're really if you need, income that's beyond that minimum wage, right, go wait tables, something like that. You're going to make more money. But of course, jobs like that, you're not going to be able to do your homework. So again, I'm not too worried about that unless I'm missing something. It's really the colleges that are going to be bummed out and not getting that subsidy. I'm less concerned about the kids. The Pell Grant, I don't, that one's a problem, right? Again, this is taking money away from the families, the students that need it the most. Every dollar counts, and I just don't see a justification that I can get behind on why this is a good idea. And
Part
and
of the
and what
downside, yeah, sorry. Part of the downside of the work study in my mind is the way it works in financial aid, as you know, it's not included as income to the student. So if they go out and get a job and start making bank and they go over the allowance, that's going to hurt. If you're getting, one could argue they're working because they need the money to help pay for school. And so if that hurts a financial aid package, that's a downside. But most work study that we see awarded, it's anywhere from 1,000. I've actually seen up to 5,000, which is crazy because most kids can't work that much at that hourly rate and be working hard on school and be in activities and having some time to have fun. It's nice that colleges put that on there, but it's like, can the student even make that amount? So we'll
well,
see. We'll see. And again, this is his budget proposal. So, again, as everything, it's not a final. It just came out. So I wanted to share it.
well, another interesting point there, Peg, too. So you're right. I think that's the highest I've seen is $5,000 awarded. What's confusing too for, I think, just about all families is that you get your financial aid offer from a school and maybe you see $5,000, hey, $500 per semester. And most people look at that and they go, okay, beautiful. My bill's being reduced by $5,000. That's really meaningful. But what that actually means is your student has an opportunity to maybe, this is not guaranteed, to maybe get a job on campus. And we're estimating that they may earn up to $5,000 a year. But we're not reducing your bill a penny off of that. We're just saying they have an opportunity to potentially get a job, to potentially earn up to this amount. So that completely different kind of topic there, but that speaks to where the lack of transparency in this thing and confusion and so as you know, so many families get tripped up by that. They think that amount's coming off the bill, and it's not.
Yeah, and it's really the family has to come together and decide this is how we're using that paycheck, or that's your beer and pizza money or whatever. It's good for time management for students. Although with mine, I was like, I don't want you working first semester. I want you to be focusing on this change in academics. But some people, we were fortunate enough that I could do that, right? Not everybody can do that.
Right.
So anyways, but with all of these things coming up and changes that we've talked about in previous episodes and, our mantra that we share a lot, control the controllables, right? You can call your senators and your congressmen and share your feelings. That you can do, but ultimately these bills passing and the nitty gritty of them, they're going to be what they are, right? And then we all have to figure out how that affects us. But there are things, there's always ways to look at things and say, control the controllables. So what can we control here? You're listening to this podcast, you're either a grandparent or you're a parent, or maybe you're a student and you're trying to get your hands around this. So it's always a good thing to think about saving for college. And, you hear this, and I know you've heard this, Matt. Well, I'm not going to save. I just heard you get screwed when you save. Are your assets included in getting aid? Absolutely. But I think you'll 100% agree with me. It's always a good thing to save, because these colleges aren't going to swoop in and give any of you the amount of money that you probably think you're going to get. I will almost guarantee that, right? So it's just what happens. Parents are always shocked at how much the colleges think they can pay. So if you can, and I want to start with the two of us sharing and being a little honest and vulnerable here with our audience about our journeys of, you have Emma, who's only 10, right? I have Shannon and Brennan, they're 31, right? So I did it, but how I did it and when I could start, and we can share our journeys, because the last thing we want is for you guys to be listening to some of this information we're going to talk about today and go into beat up, right? Don't beat yourself up. If you have an issue, you can't save right now, welcome to the club, right? Everybody goes through that, and maybe you can't right now. That's all good. But at least you're learning that when you can scroll some money aside, at least you're in the know and you have an idea of the different options. So do you want to kick it off, Matt? Kind of how
Well, what
you're
I'll say,
addressing this?
yeah, we won't go down this rabbit hole yet. If we have time today, we will a little bit, but specifically 529s, right? Because to your point, I just completely echo what you said, which is so many times parents here like, if we have savings, we're not getting financial aid. We're paying full sticker price. So I'm going to strategically not save. And beyond that, I heard if you have a 529, you're not going to get financial aid. And if you have $50,000 saved in your 529, the college is going to say that $50,000 is coming to us or whatever, right? So that's just another layer kind of to that myth that you're quote unquote screwed from getting financial aid if you save. To your point, are assets considered? Absolutely. Are 529s considered? Absolutely. But guess what? They're all treated equally. You're not punished further if you've saved in a 529 versus a mutual fund or your checking account, whatever. So, and if you've never heard that term 529, again, we will talk about it after we kind of talk about our personal journeys, even if that's not until next week. But Peggy, I think I have an idea, but let me just kind of confirm, because I don't think we've ever had this kind of conversation in depth or in specifics. Again, I know you, so I have a pretty good idea. But when did you start saving for the kids, if you remember?
The earliest we could even think about it was when they were well into elementary school, Longer story, but my husband and I had fun in our 20s and got married.
Talk about that a little bit. Talk about that. I said, talk about that a little bit.
Traveling the world, traveling the United States, just generally being a young person, not making tons of money, just kind of, lot of different experiences. But basically, we didn't get out of college and hit the ground running on doing our careers, basically. And right or wrong, it is what it is. But then we also got married, and within a year, popped out 2 kids. Weren't expecting to, got 2. So we were not financially, and my husband was studying actually when I was on bed rest with my kids, literally for 2.5 months. he was studying to get his MFA in creative writing. So I think all of us can know it wasn't investment banking. He was a poetry writer, right? So we had to do a bunch of pivots in our life because all of a sudden we had these two babies and we're like, that ain't working. Writing poems is not going to work. So anyways, my point is we did not have funds. You know, you hear people sometimes and you'll probably see them on social media and then you'll feel like crap. Oh, we saved just because I'm pregnant. We already opened the 5 times. Yeah, just tune all that stuff out. Do the best you can. So we couldn't save at all for quite a while. We had to scrape $17,000 together to buy our first house in Houston, Texas, where it was so cheap. That wouldn't do anything in most places, but we had to, and then we started thinking about it. So it was well into the elementary school
Two
years.
questions, Peggy. Let me butt in here just because I'm curious. Number one was did you say like, Bill, we got twins, you got to go get a job that pays better, brother? Or was that his decision or was that joint? That's kind of question
We
one.
both kind of knew like we gotta, because he didn't even have a job when they were born. He was literally finishing his MFA. And we both realized pretty quickly like we gotta pivot and
If I may, Peggy, if I may, the creative writing was on the wall, if you will. No? Do you like that one? I felt
I
good
love
about it.
it.
But but Houston. So did you go down there just as kind of a cost of living strategy? Was that
No, he was at University of Houston when we got
gotcha.
engaged. I was in
Okay.
grad school up at IU, go Hoosiers, and then we got engaged while I was up there. And so I was going to go to law school, but then when I got engaged, I didn't stay and go to law school on top of my other degree, and so that's why I went down because he had another year to finish his degree. It was lovely. The cost of living in Houston it still is. It's a dream compared to where you live in Seattle, where I used to live, and even here, right? So it was a great place to start and because it's affordable across the board. So, anyways, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, so is now we're fourth or fifth grade, and you guys are got your making ends meet, so to speak, and maybe a little bit beyond that, and so it was around then that you made a decision like,
Yeah,
okay,
like
let's.
fourth, fifth grade. What I will say is throughout that trajectory as my kids got older, when the going was good in our house and we were really cranking, because my husband had his own business and this and that, like we socked it away. So, as you guys know, I'm a financial planner by background. So I was like, all right, we're making bank right now. We're not, going to Maui 3 times this year. We're socking away a bunch of money when we could. And honestly, there's been ups and downs with my husband's career. Sometimes he lost his job. All right, well, we can't do it anymore until you find another job. So that was my philosophy. When the going was good, we foregoed we didn't get new counters in our kitchen and do that kind of stuff. I'm not, judging people that do. I'm just saying that helped us reach the goal because when the going was good, we socked it away. And then that compounded over the years. And when we couldn't. And like, there's a lot of people now that have lost jobs, and maybe you're on a trajectory, and all of a sudden, oh, I can't do it anymore. It's all good, But that's how we did it, and we just saved when we could. If things, people get bonuses, that kind of thing, and people love to put in pools and do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing to save when you can.
Well, and I think and because you guys were just super clear on like, this is what we value. We value giving our kids the opportunity to go to college more than we do, again, countertops, another trip to Maui, whatever it happens to be. Sounds like you guys were aligned there. Two more questions for you. The first one, so it sounds like you didn't necessarily have like, okay, X amount a month comes out of our paycheck to go into the 529 or whatever it was. It was more like we throw lump sums at it when here and there, right? The
Yeah,
business
I
has a
can't
good market.
remember. At certain point, we might have had like, $100 just auto
Of
going
course.
to each of
Yeah.
theirs. But then when it going was good, then we put a chunk in because you can do that with 529s. You can do auto or you can put chunks in. Yeah. So it
Okay.
wasn't, I think we did both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because
And
I had
that's
you
actually,
pegged.
Matt makes a great point. That's a good thing, saving in general, but in this space to just be like, okay, we have $500 extra every month. Okay, 100 is going right to the 529. And it's like an expense. It just goes out. So it's not, you don't have to be as disciplined. You have to be disciplined to set it up. But then at that point, you're kind of saving yourself from yourself of going, first of all, it's not a pain to go save. It auto saves, and it's just like an expense to go save it for yourself. So that's a great thing to think about if you're in a position where you can do that. You can part with some money every month.
Yeah, I think I'm just a huge proponent, and again, because I think I'm less disciplined than maybe you specifically, right? But there's people on both sides of the ledger here. That doesn't make me unique. So that's why I'm a huge believer in forced savings plans, right? Like if you have a 401k, especially if it's matching, like you have to contribute, and then you just get used to it. Like this is my direct deposit. I don't even kind of see what goes into the 401k or whatever, right? And that's another huge benefit. Of being a homeowner, right? That's forced savings. Every month I'm paying my mortgage, right? And that's just a part of my fixed expenses. So anytime you can put yourself in a forced savings situation, I think, again, if you're someone like me that's less disciplined, and that's why I need those guardrails, I have to put them on myself. And we've done it, voluntarily done that, but that's where you're like, all right, stare at your monthly cash flow. How much could we save? Make it come out automatically, right? So we kind of can't touch it and see it sit in the bank account.
I will say, even though we're talking about college savings here, to your point, you have a 401k or anything with your employer for it, and there's a match. If you can afford it, the first thing you do is put in the minimum to get that match. That, in my opinion, should be done probably before a 529. You are literally leaving, could be thousands and tens of thousands of dollars from your employer on the table. It grows tax-free. And, you hear people say all the time, well, you can't get loans for retirement, which is valid, right? So you do want to, and that's another thing in our philosophy, we were saving as well as we could for retirement before we started saving for the kids. That's another reason why it got delayed, because my philosophy was until we could max out retirement, because we were a little behind because of our 20s and doing what we did, I knew we had to do catch up. And so you just have to have some faith also and like manifest it, right?
Yeah,
we can't save right
that
now,
reminds
but
me
we'll be able to,
That reminds me of another kind of classic financial planner line, right? You said you can't save for retirement. The other one is you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, right, before you put it on your kids.
Yeah.
And that's what, and again, these are both kind of cheesy, but there's some truth embedded in that. And obviously the point is like, guys, you gotta be kind of financially sound as possible first, and then kind of worry about providing for the next generation. It doesn't make it right necessarily, but that's, again, financial planner.
It's actually for your kids. Honestly, my worst nightmare is like getting older and then going, I don't have enough money. You guys have some room for me? Like, I don't want to be a burden on them. And again, that's just me. Some people, that it's part of it's part of the culture in most of the world. Honestly, we are very unique in the United States. I would take my mom in a heartbeat. So I'm a little bit like, I don't know if that's hypocritical or what it is, because I would take her in a heartbeat. She doesn't need me to, but I don't want to feel like my kids would have to do that. So when you're saving for retirement, it's for you, but it's also for your kids. So you're less of a burden on them, and you can, enjoy when you kick back, which we all should be able to do.
Great point. I like that.
All right. So how about you, buddy? Like, what is your...
Yeah, well, if there's an opposite end of the spectrum, I'm on it. And it's interesting because this is largely influenced by Rosie, right? And it's largely driven by her culture. So when Emma was first born, obviously this is the world I live in. Like, right, here's here's one of the benefits of marrying me, Rosie. I live in this college world, and here's what a 529 is, and we're gonna get this thing up and running. Like, in some ways, she looked at me like I was like friggin' nuts. And again, this is largely based on her. So she's, Israeli. Her parents are immigrated here later in life, and Hebrew's their first language at home, right? So they're very Israeli, right? And she's, dual citizen. She was born and raised here, so she's more American, you would say. But like, in their culture, they think we're freaking insane for what we pay for college, right? Like, and that's kind of like,
I'm in full agreement with Rosie's parents.
Yeah. And she was like, and she came from some affluence, and especially her group of friends and all that. Like, these are like wealthy LA people, this Israeli LA community. None of them went anywhere beyond a state school, because they're like, this is not. All you got to do is graduate from. And again, I'm not saying this is right, wrong, whatever. This is just, they're very frank and practical about this, of just like, why would we pay that when we can get the same thing for a fraction of it? So even though a ton of our friends were very smart, had wealthy parents, they go community college to state college, or like her and her friends, or a lot of her group of friends, state college, right? She went to UC Santa Barbara, and amazing UC system, and she actually got into USC, right? But again, her dad was like, "What are you, insane?" It's back then it was probably, I don't know, 70 or something,
Yeah, it
and
didn't
UC
cost
Santa
100 back
Barbara's
then. Yeah.
right, and UC Santa Barbara's 12 or whatever, and like she was also practical too. Like, yeah, that is crazy, Dad. Of course, I'll go, Abba. But that's that's so that's where she came from, right? And which again is just in some ways kind of, I didn't at all, but she's like, I would rather, I'd rather go on vacations. I'd rather have life experiences. I don't. Sounds so boring to save in a friggin' thing for college to pay for these crazy prices. Like, wouldn't you rather go on vacations and get a summer house or that house? Like, hell yeah, I would. Basically, right now. So we went kind of like, and again, let's be clear, none of what we're saying are recommendations or this is right or wrong or whatever. You hear us here. We're talking about what we do and our personal philosophies and all that. Now, because I think it's important to say too, this is not because we don't value education. We've been paying college prices for Emma since she was 3 years old, literally. So she's at a Montessori here. It's a lot of money, and so we place a huge premium on her experience. It's been an amazing fit for her. Quite frankly, it's a friggin' utopia. So it's not like we don't value it, But again, Rosie just kind of came from, hey, well, I'm not. And again, this is her, and she's usually less. I don't know. When it comes to this stuff, we're kind of opposite. She's like, I'm not freaking paying $100,000 a year for college. That's crazy. When we can pay, whatever, and she can still graduate and blah blah blah. And it's funny, Peggy, and we'll do our podcast around this. I'm always like, got it. I'm totally with you, unless she gets into Harvard or MIT or Stanford. Right? I know.
And I dramatically, violently disagree with you.
I know that. I know you do. But if you guys
But I
could see
will,
this-
if Rosie were on the podcast, I would say, okay, Rosie, I hear you. I don't disagree with any of that.
Yeah.
Do you understand? I mean, I think the UCs are like 30, 35 now, all
Yeah.
in, unless you're going to make Emma live at home, and that's not college, and you don't live in California anyway.
Right.
So you still, even if that's your philosophy, unless you got an extra 30,000 given family, you still got to save. UW, where I just came from, University of Washington, all in, it's over 30,000, 35, the room and board's more than the tuition. So you still, if it's state school, you still got it. You still want to think about saving. Otherwise,
100%,
you're going to
right?
be into loans.
And for us, Peggy, again, we're a little bit unique because we're totally unique, where we've spent, some could argue, insane amounts of money for, again, I used to say at the beginning, can't she freaking do finger paints for free at the other school?
Yeah,
right?
we won't talk about, like, I'm not a huge, every kid is different, right? And your daughter, obviously. I just was like, said to Bill when kids were like, why the hell would I pay for private school when I'll try and move where the schools are decent. I'm already paying taxes. Again, that's my take. And some kids, and I've met a lot of them through the years, and you have too, through doing this work. Some kids, that is really, like you said, utopia. If that's where Emma's going to thrive, then it's probably worth every penny, right? Some kids won't thrive in public school.
Absolutely.
It's just the fact, right?
Yeah, and again, who knows, right, wrong? Like, what do we know, right? But I'll have my annual temper tantrum about paying for it, and right, and again, Rosie will just say, look, just tell me what you value beyond your child's happiness and education and being in a nice environment, and I'm all ears. Like, tell me what you value more than that, and we'll put the money towards that, right? And again, that's usually the end of that argument. But it has been, I can say, like, I think we both feel pretty secure that it's been a worthwhile investment, and she's in is where she's meant to be. But again, we're in kind of we're taking a calculated risk in a lot of ways, because our kind of philosophy is like, all right, if we can make this happen, we can basically make state school happen, right? But that is, nothing's guaranteed, right? And
you've thought about that, so you're not just
Absolutely.
Rosie's not just like, oh, we're not saving, that's crazy. I mean, you kind of in the back of your mind how things are going, and that's all I'm stressing for our listeners.
Absolutely.
Listen to Matt and then realize if that's where you're at, And then this is a whole nother podcast, but also realize if you understand how college works, you might be able to send your kid to a private school and pay the same amount as the UC. So that's a whole nother conversation if you're just looking at dollars and cents. So
It's true.
yeah.
It's a great point. We always got to not take for granted saying that, right? And to say it again, for a lot of people, these $100,000 colleges will be less than your in-state state college, right?
Or the $70,000 colleges could end up being close to, in state.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the whole business plan and how things work in financial aid and how the colleges are discounting. So that's a whole nother conversation. But just so we can tease this, and then let's discuss this in more depth on another, upcoming episode. But just super high level, if we talk about saving for college, I think on another episode, we'll talk about different ways to save, but we've brought up this term 529. So that's a college savings plan created by the IRS. Let's just, and this is probably better that we did it this way, Matt, because I nerd out on this and I think it's the greatest thing. And then people's heads are spinning, right? Like, oh my God, Peg, this is a lot. So it's probably better to do a little today and then do some more next time. So it's not overwhelming people, but that's the term you see the most is this 529. So it's basically an account that you open and you put funds in. Your child is the beneficiary, whatever. And you, like I had two, one for each child. You don't necessarily have to do it that way with twins. You're using it at the same time. Some people, people that have a junior and 2 years down, a freshman, that's your choice of how you set it up. And then usually one of the parents is the owner. Sometimes grandparents are owners. Anybody can be the owner. And the key thing about these accounts when it comes to financial aid is whoever the owner is, which I've never seen a student as an owner, that's whose asset it is. And so that's a positive in financial aid because it's a parent asset and that's assessed at a lower rate. We don't need to get in the details, but just take that away. Much lower, 15% plus lower rate than a student asset. So that's a good thing of 529s. The key pieces of this is you get tax-free growth. So you put in, say you're fortunate enough, you can start and say, here's $10,000 from gifts we got when we had our baby or whatever. Some people, maybe they'll take bar mitzvah money or whatever it is, whatever bonus, it grows tax-free. So like when you put money in the stock market every year, you're paying capital gains, you're paying capital gains distributions on mutual funds, none of that. There's never any tax. So if you could start saving when your child's young, it could grow for 16, 17, 18 years. You never pay tax. And when you take it out, you do not pay tax on those earnings as long as you spend them on qualified higher education expenses. And that's an exact term from the IRS. And basically what that is tuition and fees, room and board, books, anything else the college requires. So they say you need to get this computer and we're going to load a certain virus protection and certain programs that are specific to our college or university that all the students use, yada, yada. That can be part of it, not travel. That's the key thing to point out. And that it's the IRS. I don't think I need to say anymore. Why that isn't included, who knows, but it's not. So that's a big one where parents will make mistakes, and I get it. Of course, you're flying your kid to college. It's a college expense. No, you can't pull it out. So as long as you're spending it on those qualified higher education expenses, when you do it, you're going to get paperwork later that says you pulled out this much in a contribution, this much in earnings, and you're never going to pay Uncle Sam a dime on it. So that's the big positive. And another one is if you live in a state, I now live in a state with state income tax. Washington was one of the few that didn't. Matt has state income tax in Massachusetts. Some states will have state tax deductions if you save in that state's 529. So that's going to give you savings at that level. So that's another positive. And I will share that I can't say all the states have a 529, but I'm pretty sure most of them do. We didn't used to have one, and then we started one years ago in Washington. You don't have to do it in the state that you live in, but before, if you're thinking about opening one, before you just go find another one, because it's low cost and whatever, make sure you're not giving up possible state tax deductions in your state. So just keep that in mind. But like I had mine in Alaska part of the time. It was T. Rowe Price. Fund company was managing it, and then I moved it to Virginia. I was in the financial industry, so I had some perks and I could get certain rates, but it didn't matter that we lived in Washington. I was able to do that. We lived in Texas part of that time too. So those are the key things. The negative of a 529 is there's restrictions. You can't just say, my child got this great opportunity to go take a class after their sophomore year in high school and study photography in Peru. That's an educational thing for your kid, but that might not, most likely will not fall under that. So you can't, or there's other accounts for kids where you can literally use it for the benefit of them for anything. You could buy a pair of sneakers. You can't do that in a 529. It has to be these qualified higher education expenses. If you break that restriction, basically you're going to pay a 10% penalty on the earnings, and then you're going to pay tax on the earnings. So that's the downside. Most people that I've seen through the years, and you can comment on this, Matt, I've seen a few families where they've saved almost too much and they have to change the beneficiary, but most people are using up their 529 and still having to figure out how to pay for all 4 years differently, because it's hard, especially with the price tags now. It's really hard to save that much money. So it doesn't end up being a huge negative. Unless all of a sudden you're tapped out and you have no funds. I will say again, financial planner, have an emergency fund too. Have 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Max out your retirement, get your match, have your emergency fund, then think about college. In my opinion, you need to have that. So anyways, those are the key pieces. We can get into more specifics next time, but I think that's the key piece of 529. Do you want to add anything to that, Matt?
Not to that so much. I want to close with some kind of, again, more, I don't know, meta level thoughts I have around kind of saving for college that's more on the touchy-feely side as opposed to the X's and O's side. But we will spend more time on funds. And again, what are the pros and cons of that versus a Roth IRA versus
and other savings vehicles. We can get into that next time.
So we'll talk about that, and then we can go deeper on 529s in terms of like, okay, what are some of the options if you want to explore those or whatever. We can provide some guidance around that. But a couple things here. I remember this popped in my head as we were talking earlier today, Peg, my mom telling me that when I was getting ready to go off to college, she and my dad felt like a lot of shame and embarrassment of kind of their inability to save, basically. Like they had saved a little bit, but drop in the bucket, basically. And she was talking to some financial professional around this, and I think she might have even been crying. She just, was feeling really bad, basically, almost feeling like she didn't hold up and my dad didn't hold up to their end of the bargain. And of course that wasn't the case. That was just how she was feeling. But he said to her, like, if you would, okay, let's go back in time and say you had worked full time the entire time and never were at home with the kids, like you wouldn't have been as good a mother as you were, right? Your kids wouldn't be in this position maybe to put themselves and be able to have some college options. So, and that meant so much to her and really resonated. So hopefully if anybody's feeling that, I think that's an important message. Like, you did the best you could. You're trying to be a great parent first and then figure out how to pay these freaking insane, unattainable college costs, right?
Yeah,
So
and another podcast too, but you don't have to pay these insane costs, right? I'll share it on another podcast, exactly what we did with my son. It was like, no, we're not paying for that school. It's too much. It's not in our budget. Could we have squeezed by? Could we have gotten loans? Absolutely. But it was like, no, that's not what we're going to do. So that's part of, there's a lot of moving pieces here, and there's no shame in saving what you can and living within your budget. And I will say from the bottom of my heart, your kid is going to make their future, not college, not Matt's Harvard that he likes to keep dropping. That is not going to make their futures. There's even articles out now where employers are like, I don't want those kids anymore. I know what I'm getting. I know the attitudes I'm getting. I know how they show up. And I think one of the articles, it said, I'd rather have a kid who's been a carnival worker. Like, really. And I read it and I was like, this is lovely, because I want people to get off this buying bandwagon and thinking that's the be end all to your life, because it absolutely is not for your kids. It's not. And if it buries you financially, that's just huge negative on top of everything else. Any school that buries you financially. But if you're doing it just for that, in most cases, it's probably not a great decision. It's the decision the colleges want you to make, right? They want you to feel like that this is the be end all and you can just drop the mic after your kid graduates. But that's just the beginning of their life. Then they got to make things happen. You know, that degree, no one really cares where you went to college after the first or second job, right? And nowadays, a lot of employers, they look at who the kid and who's showing up. They don't even care as much about the degree, let alone that it's Harvard, or I don't want to beat up on Harvard, but Stanford and you know, the Ivies, you know where I'm going. I like to beat up on Harvard because that's like your favorite. So.
Well, you know, it's I don't know. First one out of the mouth, I guess.
It's in your backyard, I guess, you know.
That's right. So here's what I'll kind of say in closing as I reflect on kind of both of our philosophies here. And obviously I'm still midstream. Who knows what tomorrow holds type of deal. But it's interesting in this. So I think in some ways kind of complete opposite philosophy in terms of quote unquote saving for college or not or whatever. And it was your strategy worked for you. To TBD for me. Maybe we're crazy and whatever blows up in our face. I hope not, obviously, but we will see. But here's what I feel confident about, that I think you and I, from what I can tell, both did a really good job of we thought about it. We talked about it with our partner. We said like, okay, what's the plan here? What do we value for, like, what are we valuing, right? And again, we were like, hey, we are taking a calculated risk to kind of like bet on ourselves in some way and forego college savings because we want to enjoy these other life experience type of deal. Like that's where we do invest a lot of our money is in experiences. But I think again, right or wrong, at least there was kind of like a plan, right? We checked it. We try to check in pretty consistently. Are we still on the same page here, right? And you know, again, it's not a utopia at 11 Jasper Street. I'm not saying that, but I do feel confident that is what I would recommend to everybody. Like, hey, I'm not saying you should save, don't save it. Check in, be on the same page, hear each other out.
No, that's an amazing point. And I still remember this couple from years ago. And they literally came into the conference room. This was before I was at CAP and I had my own business. And the mom was like, my dad paid. They were literally having this conversation in front of me. My dad paid for Yale, which I'm guessing her husband knew. And he was like, forget these prices. I worked my way through college, which now is almost impossible to do unless you're going to community college. And I was like, wow. They are having this conversation now and they have like a kid in high school. So your point is really well taken. If you haven't had this conversation or really sat down together, you really should. And like nobody's right or wrong. It's like you share and, you know, marriage is a constant compromise. And, you know, as my dad said, marriage is work and you have to work on it. And he's right. You know, he was right. I didn't realize it until about 7 years in, but he's very, very right. But yeah, so that's a really important component to have. And everybody's different. Like your philosophy and Rosie's philosophy, like I was really, and my kids were kind of like this anyways, but Bill and I we're big, like, go out of your comfort zone people, the way we've lived our lives. And we wanted that for our kids. So we didn't want them to stay in the Pacific Northwest. And plus I'm a Jersey kid. So I'm like, you got to get out of here and see something else. They didn't go to Jersey. I wasn't pushing them there, but that was just our philosophy, right? And other kids, many kids stay local, they grow, they prosper, and they do wonderful things in the world. So none of, like Matt said, none of what we shared today of our personal, it's just really sharing. Some of it resonates with you, some of it maybe not. Some of it hopefully is making you think. Like, oh, I never thought about that. I never thought, yeah, we really haven't gone in depth on how much we can save or what we even feel about these price tags. Because I do know, and Matt, you're going to agree with me, what a lot of parents do, because this is so hard, you tend to like avoid, right? That's our nature. Oh, this is hard. I'll deal with it later. I'll deal with it later. And lives are so much busier than I think they even were for our parents when we were kids. And so it's easy for it just never to come up. You know, so it is an important thing just for your marriage quality as well, you know, to have that conversation. So thanks for bringing that up. That's a great point.
Well, thank you. I learned a lot, as I always do, from you, buddy.
So next time we'll get a little nerdy. We'll get a little bit more nerdy. So everybody get ready. Have your little Have your little pencil ready, your
There you
piece of
go.
paper,
Yes.
and we'll go a little bit more in depth. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a good idea of, kind of what to think about in this little piece of this big puzzle.
All right, Peggy, thank you as always. And guys, if you like us, follow us, please
Yeah,
spread the good.
please share with the masses.
Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you in a week.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, once again, thanks for listening to today's podcast as hosted by myself, Matt Carpenter, and my co-host Peggy Keough. Today's episode was edited and produced by Eileen Campbell. And if you don't already, please like us, please follow us, and we'll see you next week.